Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it's my pleasure to have Jeroen Corthout with us. Jeroen is a co-founder and CEO of Salesflare, an intelligent CRM built for SMBs, small and medium businesses, selling B2B, mostly popular with agencies and SaaS companies. Salesflare itself was founded when Jeroen and his co-founder Lieven wanted to manage the leads for their software company in an easier way. They didn't like to keep track of them manually and built Salesflare, which pulls customer data together automatically. It's now the most popular CRM on Product Hunt and top rated on review platforms like G2 for its ease of use and automation features. Jeroen, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, actually.
So let's talk about CRMs and kind of the ecosystem. There are a lot of options out there for automation and maintaining databases and data warehouses and so forth. We're talking about smaller businesses typically here because our listener is not likely to be from a mega corporation. But let's say that they've tried Infusionsoft, they might have tried a smaller platform for maintaining CRM data like let's say Capsule CRM, and they don't like the complexity of a platform like Infusionsoft. It's hard to maintain. They need outside tech support help. And the simplicity of something like Capsule is not enough for their needs, and they want something that manages email campaigns for them and so forth. What are the different options out there and how do they stack up? I've not had a lot of experience with different platforms. I know of platforms like Entreport. We use Infusionsoft ourselves and actually Capsule CRM. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what your view is of the ecosystem and where your Salesflare platform occupies a niche that hasn't already been occupied.
Yeah. Uh, and giving a full overview of the ecosystem is probably going to take more than the time we have, and I'm also not sure that I even know it completely. I know our corner pretty well, but as you said, it's a very big space. In the CRM space, I think if you go on g2.com, we have reached 800 companies now. That's just the ones that are on G2, right? Some of these aim at the very big companies like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or the products of Oracle and SAP. They have multiple. And some of those go after the mid-market and some of those go after the small businesses. But within there, it's even more complex because there's also a lot of vertical solutions for different types of companies. And there's also different CRMs for different use cases. So to give a general answer about what fits in where and how the whole ecosystem is composed is super, super difficult. You'd actually need to sort of try to make order in almost chaos.
So, let's actually just start with where you were at before you founded Salesflare,
Yeah.
because you had presumably tried some solutions like Salesforce.com and whatever
Mm-hmm.
you'd tried didn't work for you for whatever reasons. I'd like to hear what you tried and why it didn't
Yeah.
work for you.
Salesforce was the system I knew the best. Actually, I before I started Salesforce and started a few projects or companies, I was using Salesforce a lot. I was working in a marketing consultancy that helped life sciences companies to become more digital. And we would use a lot of Salesforce at these companies because a lot of those are really big companies. We would do kind of like, let's say, big multi-channel projects, a lot of marketing touches, sales touches, and not all orchestrated with CRM. And we would organize it in Salesforce, but also our company internally would use Salesforce. Now, while for instance, in big pharma companies, they came from things like Siebel from Oracle, and they were very happy to go to Salesforce because it was a nicer interface than Siebel, and that already says a lot. Like Siebel was really like very old, outdated stuff. Um, the next realization would often be that even though it all looked nicer, it still got about the same usage level. Like people were excited for a moment that they got to a new thing, but then disillusionized pretty quickly. Then they just wouldn't use it. The Salesforce would just use it for the most essential things, and we saw that at customers and also internally. Even though we were like Salesforce believers and really going for it, Salesforce would only be used for the most essential things. Like basically, the essential thing was keeping the pipeline, having the opportunities, seeing what everybody's working on, and being able to pull a forecast. Now, if you want to know everything about your customers and actually be able to manage customer relationships like CRM like suggests, then you need to go beyond that, because just an opportunity is not a customer relationship, right? A customer relationship is defined by all of the things, all of the interactions you have with customers. The information about them is even like secondary. The primary thing is the interactions you're having, like the emails you're exchanging, the phone calls you're having, the meetings, maybe the other interactions where they join your webinar or go to your site or click on a thing here or there. All of these touch points you're having define the relationship. Now, none of that was in Salesforce ever, because that requires so much data input. And it's not just a little bit of data input. It requires an enormous amount of data input and an enormous amount of also not just time and energy, but also discipline. And almost nobody has that. I know a few people, great salespeople that do have it, but I think 99% of us don't have this kind of discipline. And the added problems are, it's not just an enormous amount of work if you want to have everything up to date. Many of the systems, including Salesforce, even if they're fully filled, don't really help you really well then to follow up your customers and to manage your customer relationship better. And then added to that, for salespeople, it also means that their manager has a better view on what they're doing. And I mean, if you have to put a lot of work in something, it doesn't help you much, and somebody else is going to like constantly micromanage you or so. That's not something you want. So the end result is salespeople almost put nothing in CRMs. It's like this very bad system. They stay away from it. They build a system next to it. They'll probably start off with an Excel file or so and track their stuff in there, or have some task list somewhere, but definitely not in the CRM. Which then means that first of all, you would expect the CRM to be this great follow-up tool, a tool in which everybody organizes themselves. It isn't. Secondly, on the organizational level, it also brings about many problems. Like you can't coach your salespeople properly. It's very difficult to work together between marketing and sales because all the sales data is not there. Marketing people do not know who sales is talking to. They can send a discount to them, and then the salespeople are like, well, we were just closing the deal. Why do you send them a discount code? I mean, something simple, but you cannot have proper forecasts. There's a lot of issues linked to that, and we essentially had all these issues, and I obviously knew that Salesforce wasn't gonna help us, so I tried different systems. I think at the time we started off with Zoho. We then tried Pipedrive for a moment, I think, and then we went on to Streak. Streak was at that time the thing that worked best for us, and that was because it had some automated tracking in the sense that you could make a box which represented a deal or an opportunity, and then you could add email threads in that, and then the new emails from these email threads would automatically be added. And that was already some level of automation. But we had a lot of leads to follow up. We had a software company at the time. We made business intelligence software, and it was very hard to keep track of everything. So we dreamt of a system that would keep track of everything for us automatically. It would keep track of all the emails we exchanged, the meetings we had, the phone calls we had, whether people opened
Gotcha.
our emails, clicked on them, went to the site, any other sort of relevant things that happened. And we thought we are never going to use this if it doesn't happen almost fully automatically. And that's when we thought, okay, we're going to build a system that does that. And obviously we saw that more people need this, so we immediately made it we started a new company. But that was the initial spark for Salesflare. It's this kind of easy to use system that tracks everything about your customer relationship, which is essentially interactions, but also, I mean, secondary data, like what is their phone number and email address and how big is the company and all that. And then helps you to follow up better, to then manage customer relationships better and make more sales.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about call tracking? So let's say that you want to track incoming calls, make sure that you're attributing the calls to the appropriate marketing campaigns and
that's some advanced stuff already. Yeah.
Yeah, like CallRail, for
So,
example, does that. Does Salesflare do that too?
We're not so deep into voice over IP, to be honest. I mean, you can integrate Salesflare with different systems, but what we have natively is mainly around email integration. That's the number one channel for our customers, and our customers are SMBs who sell B2B, a lot of agencies, consultancies, tech companies. Email is first for them. LinkedIn is second for them. So we have a strong LinkedIn integration as well. And then calling is third. And for that, we currently integrate with third-party solutions. Now, what you said, like having a marketing campaign and then knowing what to attribute it to, that's some advanced stuff, which is possible if you like have, for instance, specific numbers per phone campaign.
Right.
Like theoretically, you could then push that into Salesflare, but that would, it's already it's cool stuff.
Got it. So how do you?
But it's mostly the basics actually that still go wrong in most companies. This kind of advanced fancy stuff is next level. But just tracking, just the most basic interactions and data is the thing we focus on most. Solve that, and then on top of that, we built a lot of automation.
So let's talk about the pipeline and forecasting. So if you look at a poorly implemented CRM, they're using it mainly as a phone book with here's the contact person, here's maybe the last contact that we made with this person, and their role in the company, and maybe a couple other data points. But pipeline reporting and forecasting requires that you're accurately maintaining the status in the CRM of the relationship, whether they're at a proposal stage, whether they are looking at other vendors or not, or other agencies, etc. And so then there's a percentage applied of likelihood to close and how long the deal has been active. All that gets factored in, and then when it's likely to close, if it's going to close, all that is then mapped out on a timeline, so you can see we're expecting this kind of revenue coming in from this particular salesperson over the next X number of weeks or months. So what would be a good implementation.
That is, that is indeed the basics of. I mean, as soon as you have your sales process mapped out, this is the way you can calculate sales forecasts. Now, for this, you do not necessarily need an advanced CRM. We actually, if you Google Excel CRM template, you'll find an Excel template that we created that serves that purpose. That exactly keeps the fields you listed. That then allows you to keep a status on each of the opportunities, and then in the next sheet you'll see the dashboard. This is that's like the simplest version of a CRM almost. What you cannot do in that sheet is all of the other things I mentioned before. It's really keeping track of the relationship, because it's very hard to keep a proper timeline and all the interactions and all that within a sheet. That's just, I mean, you cannot put that in or you can put it in cells, but it's going to start resembling more of a database kind of thing. That is very hard to view as a human. But anyways.
So what's the benefit of maintaining the pipeline? What do people or companies do with that information? Does it change the way that they run the companies?
Definitely.
Expense things? Like what changes because you have an accurate pipeline?
A lot of things. First of all, the most basic reason to have a pipeline is to be able to guide your customers properly through the sales process. Because the sales pipeline should represent the different steps you're taking with them, from the point where basically they have a problem to you solving it with them and you getting paid for it. The more actionable you can make the stages of your pipeline, the better you know at each point this customer is here, and the standard next step to take with them is this, and that way you always know what's next with them, right? So that's very handy for you, because that way you don't you talk to the customer again, you know exactly where to guide them, and you can keep sort of momentum in there. That's one. That's if you look at it on the per customer basis. Then next to that, it gives you this great overview over different customers where everybody is, and you can start focusing on different parts there. And you can also you can say all of these customers here that are in this stage, I'm going to work on them now, and you can start batching up your work like that. Plus, if you see your process and you have, like we have dashboards in which you can analyze how long opportunities stay in certain stages and all that, and we have dashboards in which you can see the conversion rates from stage to stage, you can start optimizing. You can start seeing where things go wrong. Like, oh, the conversion from this to this stage seems like low, or they seem to stay too long here, and you can start analyzing why that is. Why do people stay so long here? Is it because they have to wait for a certain thing, or I mean, it could be anything. But you can basically fix your process if you see it and you see what's happening. You can start fixing. Then there's another level to it where it gives you this ability to know what kind of revenue is coming, which obviously for most businesses is a very interesting thing. If you know what money is going to come in, and you know the money you're going to spend, then you know when you are going to have enough cash, and when you won't have enough cash, and you can do proper planning for that, which increases the likelihood that your business survives.
Yep.
And then additionally, I would say, well, I could keep going for a while, but then maybe one last is it enables also two more things. One, it helps the sales manager to have a good idea of what's going on, as a starting point, because that pipeline just shows what is in which stage. You of course need to dig in to know what is happening, and you can click through and see, okay, this is here, how has that been moving, why, what's happening, and where are we, what are we discussing. This makes that the manager can actually use this as a coaching tool. And finally, what did I want to say? Oh, it also helps you to keep balance, and that's a very important thing. You can't uh, have a sort of sales mode where sometimes you're full on lead generation and sometimes full on closing, because this is going to generate a very fluctuating business, which for many reasons will be problematic, especially if you have a team that needs to deliver projects. Sometimes there's a lot of new projects that need to be delivered all of a sudden, and then nothing. And then you need to have this consistent lead generation and follow up and closing at the same time, not in sort of a roller coaster mode, but in a constant mode. There are different ways of dealing with this. There's the possibility of making different functions there and having like SDRs and then accounts reps or whatever you want to call it. Or you can actually just use your pipeline as a guidance. Make sure that you always have a nicely looking pipeline where you have a bunch of new things at the beginning, and then it's sort of yeah, gradually throughout the stages, it sort of keeps making sense with the conversion rates, and if you know what I mean, like you see that you're applying effort equally to the pipeline.
So it seems like you could then have your account reps or the account managers doing upsell and cross-sell opportunities, and not just relying on the salespeople then, because there's more visibility into where things are stalling out and where opportunities are being left on the table.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, it's easier to work together as a team and know what's going on, especially if you start splitting up functions. If you have people to generate new leads, people to close new leads, and then people who take over when it's an existing customer. Imagine that's a common model. If you do not have that overview and it's not in a system or so, then it's very hard to keep control. Of course, every time you can do a handover, the one person explains to the other all of the stuff that happened. But if it's all there in one place, you can even work together in real time. You don't have to per se communicate a lot. It's just there. You can see what's been talked about with the customer. You can see what happened. You can see what stage it's in, which helps a lot if you're trying to address customers as a team.
Yeah, let's talk about the stages. You mentioned it's important to have actionable stages. Can you differentiate for our listener examples of actionable stages and not actionable stages?
Good question. Let me find an example of not so actionable. Well, a common one. It's not super bad, but a common one is an interested stage. It sort of makes sense as a status in between actions, a status on which you're going to take further action, but it's not an action. But it's fine. I need to find one that doesn't make sense. Yeah, I can currently only come up with correct examples. But basically, what you like to have is that it. Yeah, I can say generalistic stuff, but it should represent the steps you take with customers in the best possible way. A generalistic thing is like you have leads, people you would like to contact. You contact them, so it's a logical next step. Then when you contact them, you try to get a meeting scheduled, perhaps. So that meeting could be, meeting scheduled as a next step.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you have the meeting, in the meeting you're going to try to qualify them. So you're going to try to define whether they are a lead you will be able to sell to in the end, because they have budgets. You're talking to the right person. They need what you have, and there is a specific timeline in which this is all going to happen. Or one of these things is not true, like they don't have the budget. They do have the need, but they don't have the budget. Then it's not a qualified lead. So the next step, qualified or not. If they don't get qualified, they go to lost. If they qualify, they go to qualified. And if they're qualified, so you can sell to them. Then in many businesses, the next step will be to make a proposal. So then you'll have the next step proposal made, and when you've proposal made / sent, right, and then the next step is either they accept that proposal and they're won, or they don't accept that proposal and are again lost. That is a very generalistic pipeline. It's largely also, I think, where we have standard in the software with very actionable steps. Now, this is standard. Most people have something that deviates here and is a bit more specific. Then you should definitely change it, and it should represent the way your customers like to buy and the way your sales organization can adapt to how they'd like to buy. So it's like the buying process / sales process.
So what's an example of a customization that an agency might make?
This is actually relatively how agencies would do it. Some agencies work differently than others. There's some agencies that, for instance, they would like to, in their sales process, they have a sort of strategy session or a free analysis of something,
Right.
which is sort of like a qualification. It's sometimes it's before the qualification step, and sometimes just after. It's a sort of in between step which leads to, in the end, the proposal, if the customer sort of can find themselves in that analysis. That happens often in the sort of companies that are working with customers in a slightly more strategic level. What we see lately as well is that early stages are often a bit more defined. A lot of companies are doing the sort of LinkedIn follow-up, and then they have sometimes a few stages for that. I'm not entirely in favor of that, but and then they have a stage in which they also try to follow up on email, and then see whether they're getting in contact or not. It's a relatively new thing that people also do. I think the sort of test or strategy session kind of thing, the assessments they do somewhere in the sales process to show that you're giving someone to the customer, something to the customer, and you've really identified their needs, is definitely a good one.
Do you find that many of your users, clients, are doing cold outreach? Let's say outreaching via LinkedIn, using InMail to somebody who's probably never heard of them before, or is it mostly warm leads that they're maybe following up with from, I don't know, exhibiting at a trade show or speaking at a conference? My thought about this is that cold outreach has become a lot harder these days, and that agencies in
Definitely.
particular are doing a lot less of it. But maybe I'm wrong. You have interactions with a lot more agencies than I do, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
It can still work. It depends on who you're targeting mostly, and how good you are at cold outreach also. But who you're targeting is the bottleneck. If you're targeting startup founders or SaaS founders like myself, it's probably very hard because we get spammed like crazy. But then in some other places, like I just come off a call with a partner of us in Italy. There they do very, very successful LinkedIn and email outreach, often to target groups who don't get that level of spam yet, or So there it's still works, but yeah, it depends who you're after. For agencies, generally, it's probably harder because they're after founders, business owners, sales, marketing profiles. Um, yeah, and then it also depends on the type of thing you're selling. If you're in enterprise sales, and it's enough that you build your network and get in a few deals to for your business to thrive, then you probably don't need that much cold outreach. And you can use a sort of approach in which you actually use your work as a reference, and try to get your consultants as much client facing time as possible to then sell more. But if you're selling smaller projects to smaller companies, you'll probably need volume and you'll need that sort of outreach. And then even though it might not work amazingly, it will definitely still get results. You might just have to do more of it for it to get results. To put exact percentages on it, I mean, generally, I think more of our customers are probably in the case where they do smaller projects for smaller companies. So I think you'll see more leads from outreach than warm leads, or inbound leads is actually for most companies a very hard thing because it requires a lot of work. It's not something you get from from one day to another. Our business thrives on inbound leads, but that is the result of many years of work.
So where do you get your leads from?
We get our leads from people looking review sites. We get our leads from people recommending other people, from people finding us in certain blog posts, and from people finding our blog posts. That is probably 80-90% of them.
Gotcha. Are you doing anything particularly innovative that most of your competition's not doing in terms of your lead gen?
In terms of lead gen, I've been on a lot of podcasts, which most companies don't do, but I wouldn't say it. We saw at least it. If we talked about attribution for a moment earlier,
Yep.
at least I cannot attribute a lot of trials or new customers to podcasts. If anything, we are, let's say, doing more systematic efforts in some fields, like getting in touch with blogs and all that to build relationships and in the end get listed and all that is something we focus very hard on. And if we're talking about content marketing, a lot of companies take more the volume over quality approach. We more do the opposite. Should we call these things innovative? Probably not. I think it's just a matter of the approach that works and common sense rather than it being insanely innovative or so.
Are you or are any of your clients doing anything particularly innovative in regards to email outreach, especially when we're dealing with cold outreach? You mentioned, I think it was a company out of Italy that was doing a good job of it. Like, what would be an example of a really innovative approach to cold outreach via email?
You're asking innovative, or you're asking what works?
Both. Clearly, if it's
Both.
not
Okay.
innovative and it's what everybody else is doing, like, hey, I have a guest post sort of thing, then those get deleted immediately and there's no ROI from it. So yeah, what's working, what's innovative that you're seeing or that you're doing yourselves?
Yeah, but when I think about innovative, I think about this kind of new things that people do that are gimmicks that work for a moment and then stop working. I don't think that is what makes the difference. Like for instance, there was a while where people would like put this personalized pictures in emails, or a link to a video which looks personalized but isn't, or stuff like that. That might be innovative, new technology, new possibilities, and all that. But it's not necessarily um, what works. What works is really getting into the mind of the person who's on the other side, really imagining what it would be to receive your email, what kind of emotional response you would get, whether you would immediately go to the archive or spam button, or whether you would actually hover for a few seconds and think, I should read this thing. And then actually when you read it, what kind of response you get then, and whether you then actually feel like you should reply or click or not. I think that's where most of the difference is made. And the rest of it is also not a great matter of innovation. I mean, in our software, we have this email sequences tool, but it's not insanely innovative or so. It's like it's a thing that sends emails at scale and follows the quota of your mailbox, and you can personalize the email and those kind of things, and then you can set the timings and make sure that it keeps sending, for instance, until people reply or so. Uh, Many other tools do the same thing. They don't do it as well within the CRM and as easy, but it's they do the same thing. But what you do with that is what actually makes a difference. It's the sort of message you bring uh, to the right audience with the right timings, with the right twists. Maybe if you're following up, like you try once this way, you try once the other way. Uh, that's what really brings results to people.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked what you said earlier about a gimmick that might work for the short term, but isn't sustainable or lasting, like putting a personalized picture or what looks like a personalized video into the email message. Yeah, those are definitely gimmicks that caught my attention as a recipient for a little while, but then I realized that wasn't that special anymore.
Yeah,
Whereas,
you see it three times and then you're like,
yeah,
well,
yeah, I'm done with that. But the idea of a hook that grabs me and delivers real value or intrigues me, that has more staying power. And something that worked
mm-hmm,
really well, for example, for one of my clients, we found an article written in the Denver Post, and it was a very relevant article to their topic space, and it was fresh. It was within 3 weeks, and of course, the journalist's name was associated with the article. So we were coaching the client to reach out directly to that journalist and send a very thoughtful email about their article. And he sent me a draft
yeah,
beforehand and was like, no, 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 that's not good. That's a mini press release. Try it again and say something really insightful about what the topic was. The topic was rising rents in downtown Denver. And what he came up with
mm-hmm,
on that second go around was really thought provoking and thoughtful. And that got an immediate reply within an hour of it being sent to that journalist. And there wasn't any gimmick in there. There wasn't like a personalized picture of the person's name on a whiteboard or anything like that. But it clearly showed the person who was sending the email, who was the general manager of this pretty big company, had read the article, had some interesting thoughts on it, and just as a soft sell kind of mention at the end, is like, oh, by the way, we're rehabbing a building in downtown Denver, and we'll be doing a grand reopening of it in another week. And turns out that the journalist sent a colleague to go cover that, and they wrote a full page article about that new building, just because of that one simple cold outreach to that journalist with not a gimmick but a hook of
Mm-hmm.
really thoughtful things about his article.
And that's what makes, in a sea of messages you get where you wonder, like, what was the person on the other end thinking when they wrote this? Why would I ever respond to this kind of, in that sea of messages that you really think, like, I shouldn't respond to this. If you see something really thoughtful, something where you think, oh, this person thought about it, and they took a moment to understand me, and they're not like hard selling me anything, because that's also an immediate turn off. If you yeah, achieve to make that happen, then there's still a possibility. And journalists, they're actually some of the most difficult. They're at least as difficult as founders of SaaS companies, I think, because the only thing they get is people who want to have articles written about them, right? So they have a tendency of always like pushing people away. If you can achieve it there, that's an amazing result, I think.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are around what people, like salespeople, should be loading into their CRM. Is it, for example, the
Um,
spouse's name, the person's birth date, and other kinds of trivia points that you can use weaving into the conversation, or maybe sending a birthday card, or maybe saying happy anniversary when their wedding anniversary comes up. Like, what sort of things do you think are really clever, or at least um, good practice to do?
yeah. Um, I would say whatever works for you. But if sending birthday cards in your business works, then you should have people's birthdays. If knowing the name of their spouse is something that works in your sector, like, oh, how are things with Mary or so, then you should definitely have their names. Although I think these things are probably uh, uh, secondary, in the sense that the most important thing is the reason why you are in touch with each other. And I think the most essential things you should have in a CRM is what is this person's problem, uh, uh, which you'll probably have, I'm supposing, if you're trying to sell them something. Why haven't they solved it yet? And what might stop them from solving it? Because that's something you always need to have in mind when you're taking to the next step. Like, how can this go wrong? And then what is the next step? But that's often sort of exemplified by the sales pipeline. The next step is the next stage. But if you know these things deeply, then you can properly support your sales process. The other things you mentioned are great if they help you maintain the relationship with the potential customer or the customer. But only if, of course, if it's a bit creepy in your sector to know the names of spouses or birthdays, or then definitely not. If it's something you're in this sort of more personal relationship space, then I think that makes sense and it's great. But
Now, you mentioned earlier that your tool has dashboards to look at things like conversion rates from stage to stage. What have you found in your organization by maintaining those kind of dashboards of where things fall off the rails, or opportunities tend to get lost? And what have you done to shore up
yeah,
those weak points?
yeah. we have done a lot of things in the past 8 years. So, but these kind of dashboards where it shows you that between certain stages things fall off, and then the conversion rate is not great. That's usually the starting point for an investigation. Like you start wondering, why is this the case, and then you start digging in, and then you need to have all the data behind it. And you start looking like, okay, these deals, why didn't they move to that stage? What happened here? And then you go in there. To give you some examples, but our sales process is actually, if we're talking about our sales process for Salesflare, it's largely self-guided. Although we try to get in touch and help people. A lot of it is it starts with starting a trial. We have had to change a lot of things. Many of these things are product related though, so I don't know whether they're super interesting to highlight now. Let me think. Because many of the latest things we did were there's like for instance in our prime thing in our when you come on the software, you start a trial, it will show you a walkthrough of the software, and it asks you to do things, and the last thing it asks you to do is to drag an opportunity from one stage to another, like drag and drop. And we saw in our we have this kind of software that records sessions fully anonymized and everything, but it shows what people do in the software. It showed that most people didn't get how to drag and drop the things, and we we made a few fixes. First of all, there's like a big arrow that shows from where to drop it, and then on the we changed around the copy, like to say like to give the instruction much clearer even. And then if you read the instruction and you still didn't get it, there is a button that says "Do it for me." And if you click "Do it for me," it just does it for you, and that increased our conversion rate because otherwise people would just get stuck on that step. They might get past it, but they by that time they would have built up so much frustration that they would have less patience for the rest of the exploration, and that wouldn't be good. On a sales level, the main issue we are facing is what I actually just mentioned, is that it's very hard for us to get in touch with people. Like people who try our software are almost reluctant to talk to us because they're afraid that we're going to sell them on it or something. Well, we are there to help them with all of the questions they have, and they probably have lots of them. Still, they hold back because they think that if they get in touch with us, we will do this devious thing, which is forcing them to use our software and pay us or something. I don't know. So we need to we have all kinds of things set up to be there at the times that they are in trouble, or the times that they might be facing trouble. We will reach out and offer our help, and that is actually the best way to get them from the stage where they're merely trialing to us being in touch and being able to help them.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, and what would be an example or two of marketing and sales integration, so that things are really humming along, best practices are implemented? What would those best practices be so that marketing and sales work together, so like hand in a glove?
I think it's the top best practice is seeing all of the marketing and sales interactions in one place, so that you understand together which touch points you have with customers. So if the marketing team has sent out an email, that you see that people clicked on it and opened it and all these kind of things, or if they reached out through some other channel, also that it's visible. The marketing team usually is not the big problem. However, it's usually the sales team not logging it, but that's why we built the software. Next to that, I think a really great thing is, and it sort of links back again to what you said about attribution, is if you can, if the marketing team generates leads for the sales team, that you can properly attribute things from the very beginning to the very end, because then you actually know what kind of marketing dollars are well spent. But that's actually a difficult thing for many reasons. Unless people come through things like forms that are specific to certain campaigns or so, then you know it exactly. But when you are like us, for instance, relying on reviews on review sites and being mentioned on blogs and coming on podcasts and all these kind of things, it becomes very hard to attribute leads to the right channels. So it's a big spectrum between these two, of course. But if you can achieve that, that's really the Valhalla, because then it's not the kind of situation anymore where 50% of your marketing budget is spent on the right things and 50% is just to throw away. Then you know exactly what is well spent and where you should actually spend more.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're out of time. If our listener wants to trial your software, where do they go? And if they want to follow some of your insights on your blog, and I know you have a podcast as well, where should they go for that?
Yeah, the website is salesflare.com. So Salesflare is like sales and then flare like Flare. You can also, if you go to our site, there's a link at the top that says blog. There's a link at the top right that says try it for free, which is where you can try the software and you don't have to enter a credit card. I think you get up to 30 days on the trial to just figure it all out. My podcast is a bit harder to find, but if you type, for instance, Spotify or any other app, you type Founder Coffee, you'll find it. And if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is probably the best place. You can find my name probably somewhere on this episode. It's Jeroen Corthout. There's only one person with my exact name. If you typed it into LinkedIn, you'll find me. And you can send me a connection request, best with a personal message. Because otherwise I will not know. I will assume spam. But if you write that you came from the Marketing Speak podcast and would like to have a chat, then I'll certainly accept the connection request and we can have a chat.
Awesome. Well, Jeroen, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for sharing your story of starting the company and some of the lessons learned and some of the great features in your tech. And hopefully our listener will be inspired to up-level their own CRM, whatever they're using, or perhaps try yours out as an alternative. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you, listener. We'll catch you on the next episode of Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.